The text landed while Emily Carter, 36, was tying silk ribbon around a customer's gift box. The boutique's bell chimed, tissue paper rustled, her hands stayed steady. 2 lines lit the screen. I'm leaving you and moving to Miami with my 20-year-old girlfriend. I've already emptied our joint account. Daniel Brooks, 47, had his name floating at the top like a cheap tag on an expensive dress. Emily lifted her eyes, caught Mrs. Pierce's pleasant smile, and tucked the phone beneath the counter, finished the wrap, and slid the purchase across the glass with a nod. She looked at the message again and typed 3 words without rushing. Good luck, Daniel. She slipped the device in her blazer pocket and walked the floor. Hangers faced the same direction, shoes sat at exact angles, light slid along chrome rails. When she paused at a mirror, her posture remained tall, chin parallel to the ground. She thumbed another switch. The pendant lamps brightened. The rhythm didn't break. She folded a scarf, tucked a price tag, checked the inventory tablet, then reopened for the afternoon with the same smooth twist of the deadbolt. At closing, she counted cash, recorded deposits, and turned off the music. Her heels clicked evenly on the old hardwood as she crossed to the office safe. She stored the pouch, locked the safe, and picked up her purse. No flurry, no mess. Outside. Dusk gathered above brick storefronts. Emily set the alarm, drew the door tight until the latch kissed home, and walked toward her car, hair caught in a light breeze. The text glowed again on the screen through the bag's thin leather. She didn't look at it. Traffic whispered along the curb as she drove home. A turn signal ticked, precise as a metronome. The porch light came on when she opened the door. Inside, she set 2 pieces of mail on the console table and hung her jacket. The kitchen clock ticked. A pot simmered on low for later. She took out her laptop, opened a folder marked Documents, and clicked a subfolder labeled Evidence, dated neatly. A row of files waited like labeled jars on a shelf. She added a new screenshot, the message framed clearly. The cursor blinked. The refrigerator motor hummed. The evening widened into simple tasks that made clear sounds. The signs had arrived in small, measurable ways, observable facts more than feelings. Daniel started arriving home later than his calendar suggested. The hours never matched the payroll deposits he bragged about. He bought new shirts with narrow cuts that hugged a softening middle. He announced a gym routine with the zeal of a convert, and his phone learned to stay face down on the counter, vibrating against laminate like a trapped insect. When Emily asked for the passcode to update the family streaming plan, he laughed, said it must have reset, and changed it in front of her, thumbs moving too fast to follow. At the company holiday party, she watched him tell the same joke twice, his hands carving the air. A new receptionist named Sophia laughed like it was a fresh masterpiece both times. The girl's palm touched Daniel's sleeve in little taps. Emily didn't react. She stepped aside for a server carrying sparkling water, accepted a glass, and listened to Sophia explain the special playlist she had assembled for the office. Emily nodded, polite, and drifted to the buffet, exchanging brief greetings that left no scratch marks. Outside the office context, other eyes noticed changes. Her sales associate, Nora, saw the extra gym bag in the back seat when Daniel borrowed Emily's SUV. "He's really on a fitness kick," Nora remarked while steaming a dress, the nozzle spitting fine mist. Emily set hangers on the rail and said, "Seems so." Without shade, her neighbor, Mr. Alvarez, waved from his porch one evening and commented on Daniel's new haircut. Sharp, like he's 20 again. Emily lifted a hand in return, the motion spare and regular. Receipts offered their own geometry. A slip for dinner for 2 at Harvest Vine lay folded in a jacket pocket on a night he claimed a late meeting. 2 cappuccinos, 1 tiramisu. No business notation. There was also a sprawling hotel charge on a statement, framed by a cluster of gas stations across town, as if someone had driven circles before landing. Emily printed everything and slid each sheet into a clear sleeve. The binder snapped shut with a precise click. When friends asked about the marriage, she didn't dramatize. "We're busy," she would remark, eyes open and dry. At a Saturday farmer's market, an old college friend, Tasha, hugged her and mentioned Daniel's increasingly youthful wardrobe with an amused lift of eyebrows. Emily laughed lightly along with her, then selected peaches, checking for bruises with quick thumbs. Her tone never wobbled. The peaches went into the canvas bag. The bag went over her shoulder. Life kept its posture. Her preparation had begun months earlier, built from ordinary tasks arranged in a careful line. On a Tuesday, she visited a bank 2 blocks away from their usual branch. She opened a separate account under her name only, transferring her personal savings and future boutique profits into it. The banker slid forms across the desk. Emily signed each with the same elegant signature she used on thank you cards. No whispers, no rushed breath. She simply organized. On a Friday morning, she sat across from a family attorney, Marissa Cole, whose desk held a single pen and a neat stack of legal pads. Emily placed the binder between them. Marissa flipped through with quick, practiced fingers, stopping to align the edges. "You keep records," the lawyer observed, tone neutral but approving. Emily nodded once. Marissa explained the terrain: separate property laws, the importance of clean books, the timeline for filing, the protocol for service. Emily listened, kept her back straight, and slid a fresh pen into her purse. At home, the deed to her grandmother's house remained in the fireproof box where it had lived since probate. She confirmed the title again online, printed the page, and clipped it to the deed with a small binder clip. In another file, she stored the incorporation papers for the boutique, signed years before, with her name alone on the owner line. Payroll records, supplier contracts, and quarterly tax filings were chronologically ordered. Marissa had advised that tidiness often did more work than adjectives. Her movements remained outwardly unremarkable. She ordered tissue paper in bulk, tested a new scent diffuser in the shop, and trained Nora on a POS update. She rotated window displays, muted winter tones giving way to early spring color. In the evenings, she walked a measured loop around the neighborhood at the same time, waving to the same dog walkers, her strides even. Preparation fit inside her normal routines like lining inside a jacket, hidden but structural. One evening, Daniel declared he wanted to merge the remaining checking accounts to simplify things. Emily agreed easily at the kitchen counter while the kettle clicked. The next morning, she moved the remainder of her private savings to the new bank and kept exactly 2 months of predictable deposits in the joint account. The figure looked ordinary, visible enough to avoid suspicion, lean enough to minimize damage. When she closed the laptop, the screen's reflection showed a woman with a calm mouth and shoulders held level. She also called a credit card company to request separate alerts. The representative spoke in a bright, scripted tone. Emily answered with crisp brevity. She set the alerts to ping for airline purchases, hotel charges, and transactions over a threshold. The rep confirmed the settings and thanked her for her diligence. Emily thanked her back and hung up. Her fingers relaxed against the case. Daniel's message about Miami triggered the first countermeasure like a switch. After sending, "Good luck," Emily waited. The second message arrived quickly. "Don't bother begging. Sophia and I leave tomorrow. I'll send for my things later." Another followed. "You're not getting any younger. At least you have your little shop." Each ding put more ink on a page. Emily took clean screenshots, cropped the edges, and filed them in the evidence folder. The clock above the stove edged past 7. Then she placed a calm call to the card issuer. "2 first-class tickets to Miami were purchased today on our joint card," she stated. "They're not authorized." The representative asked clarifying questions. Emily read numbers aloud in an even, clear voice. The rep inquired if she had documentation. Emily offered to forward screenshots and a notarized statement. the cancellation processed while Emily looked out the kitchen window at the porch light she had just turned on. The rep also removed Daniel as an authorized user. A polite sign-off ended the call. The next morning, while she measured ribbon behind the counter, Daniel's texts arrived in a staccato line. "What did you do to the card?" "The airline won't honor our tickets." "The hotel canceled." The dots bubbled, messages stacked. Emily set her phone face down by the register, greeted a customer by name, and wrapped a purchase with neat little folds. Later, she forwarded the entire chain to Marissa with a short note, confirming documentation of unauthorized travel attempts. Marissa replied within minutes. "Received. Thanks." By afternoon, Daniel's mother, Linda, called. Emily watched the caller ID flash on the boutique's display phone and tapped the speaker. Linda's voice came out brisk, but wavering. "Daniel says you're overreacting and sabotaging his travel. He says you drove him away." Emily slid a tray of sunglasses into a case and said, "He emptied the joint account and tried to charge flights with a receptionist on our card. I have his messages." A silence gathered at the other end, the comfortable hum of the boutique filling it. "I see," Linda said at last. "Well, I'll tell him to calm down." That evening, a process server delivered papers to a budget motel near the airport where Daniel and Sophia had taken a room. The server's dashcam caught Daniel opening the door in a tight t-shirt and designer jeans, jaw clenched. Sophia hovered behind him, arms folded, a suitcase unzipped on the bed, paper touched palm, signature scratched a line. The hallway camera blinked a red light. Emily didn't watch the footage. She simply received confirmation from Marissa and filed it. After the first night, the next business day presented its own test. A supplier arrived 10 minutes early with cartons of spring handbags. Emily slid open the back door, counted boxes aloud with the driver, and signed the manifest with a pen that clicked crisply in her hand. She knelt and sliced tape in one clean glide, lifted a bag from its cradle of tissue, checked stitching and hardware, and set it on a dusted shelf. When the driver joked about Miami weather, she smiled a small, courteous smile that never reached for more than necessary. She arranged the display slowly, letting texture and shape do the talking. Saffron leather near slate, matte next to gloss, shoulder straps tucked the same way. Nora wheeled out the garbage and peeked in. "Looks good," Nora said. Emily nodded once and adjusted a buckle by a 1/4 inch. Through the front windows, the crosswalk signal flashed "walk" and then "don't walk" in the same unbothered cycle as always. The weekend after service, she attended a neighborhood block cleanup. She wore a gray sweatshirt and work gloves, handed out contractor-grade trash bags from a flat of boxes, and bent to lift damp cardboard from a curb. When a volunteer asked, with gentle curiosity, if she was okay, she pointed to a storm drain that needed clearing and gestured for a rake. The two of them worked side by side, moving leaves into a wheelbarrow until the grate showed its grit again. No speeches, just a clearer drain. The inspector joked about her timing. She smiled once, brief and polite, then returned a scarf to its stand and reopened the door for business. Reactions rippled through their circle. Jenna, Daniel's sister, started a group chat with cousins before noon, and within hours the town's rumor mill churned like a mixer. At the boutique, customers arrived with sympathetic smiles and brisk business. A retired teacher bought 2 bags she had admired for months. A florist sent a bouquet with a card that read, "For composure under pressure." Emily arranged the flowers between a display of leather clutches, adjusted the stems, and thanked the delivery driver with a brief nod. Linda called again, less accusatory, more bewildered. "He's saying you locked down everything," she reported, voice thick. "He's furious, Emily. He says you're cold." Emily glanced at the boutique's front window where a pair of teenagers pressed noses to the glass, admiring a sequin dress. "The court will sort the finances," she said. "I recommend he return the funds he withdrew." Linda inhaled audibly. "He says that money's gone." Emily didn't answer that. The tap of her pen on the counter made a tiny metronome. Neighbors added their commentary at a measurable volume. Mr. Alvarez shook his head in the grocery line and muttered about midlife crises while shifting a bag of oranges. A barista at the corner cafe handed Emily a latte on the house and said, "Heard about the Miami mess. You're handling it like a boss." Emily lifted the cup in a small salute, steam feathering past her cheek. Sophia's social media poured fuel on the conversation. She posted a boomerang of palm trees and wrote, "New chapter. Who dis?" under a photo of 2 packed suitcases. When followers asked about the canceled flight, she pivoted to a filtered selfie captioned, "Minor turbulence." Jenna screenshotted everything and sent it to Emily, who forwarded it to Marissa without comment. Online, the narrative began to shift. Friends who had initially parroted Daniel's lines about growing apart stopped posting. A few defensive voices went quiet. The boutique's page saw a steady rise in follows, then orders. The boutique's sales rose that weekend. Nora handled the rush with clean, quick motions. Emily worked the back office, printing shipping labels and sealing boxes. Her movements were efficient, her handwriting neat. She didn't make speeches. She made exact change. Monday's emergency hearing took place in a courtroom with flaking cream paint and a temperamental thermostat. Emily arrived in a navy suit, hair smoothed at the nape, a slim folder in her hand. Marissa set the binder on counsel table, corners aligned. Daniel entered in a blazer too trendy for the venue, jaw working. Sophia waited in the hallway, arms crossed, ponytail high, chewing gum with brisk, short pops. The judge, a woman with reading glasses low on her nose, called the case. Marissa spoke in steady paragraphs, laying out dates, amounts, and exhibits. She pointed to screenshots of Daniel's texts admitting the withdrawal and the attempted travel charges. She handed up the deed, the incorporation documents, the financial separation patterns. Her finger tapped lightly on the edge of each page as if keeping time. Daniel's attorney tried to counter with a suggestion that Emily was vindictive, that she had calculated to embarrass him. The judge held up a palm. "Mr. Brooks," she addressed him, voice even. "You've admitted to emptying a joint account and attempting to use a shared card for personal travel." "That isn't a misunderstanding." The order came crisp. Shared assets frozen pending dissolution. Unauthorized funds to be returned within 24 hours. Daniel's access to joint credit revoked. Admonition on relationships with subordinates logged for the record. The gavel's tap was more a click than a bang. Emily didn't celebrate. She gathered the folder and nodded once to Marissa. In the hallway, Sophia hissed, "So we're not going to Miami?" Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. Emily walked past them, heels sounding a precise rhythm on the floor. At the emergency hearing, the exchange between Daniel and the judge stretched longer than the quick summary the order suggested. When the judge reread his text aloud, "I've already emptied our joint account." A sharp, almost embarrassed cough sounded from the gallery. Daniel shifted his stance, fingers picking at a cuticle. "It was heat of the moment," his attorney offered. The judge's eyebrows lifted. "Heat does not legalize misappropriation," she said. The court reporter's keys clicked, steady as rainfall. Outside afterward, reporters from the local station angled for comments. Emily stopped only long enough to say, "I'm focused on my business," and to turn her face so the camera caught her profile for a brief moment, calm, composed, unadorned. Daniel tried to speak at length, gesturing with open palms, but the editing later trimmed his words to a few incomplete phrases. The 6 o'clock segment spent more time on a graphic titled Timeline than on his talking. In the weeks that followed, Daniel's arc dipped publicly. HR at his company opened an inquiry after an anonymous tip linked his travel plans to Sophia's role. A letter of reprimand arrived, heavy cream paper with a corporate logo. He lost a promotion he had been crowing about. A colleague with quieter habits stepped into the role. Jenna told Emily about arguments at their parents' house, the thud of a slammed door, a car starting and stopping. Linda's patient voice fraying. The neighbors noticed Daniel pacing on the driveway at night, phone to his ear, shoulders hunched. Sophia's studio, once the backdrop for filtered photos, shrank under the weight of a second toothbrush and a box of cufflinks. She posted cryptic quotes about boundaries and growth, then removed their couple picture entirely. A week later, a story showed her at a rooftop bar laughing with friends her own age. Daniel, not tagged, responded with late-night calls that went unanswered. He sent Emily a string of texts swinging between blame and bargaining. "You destroyed me. We can fix this. Your shop would be nothing without me." Emily forwarded each to Marissa and silenced the thread. Bill collectors called the landline at Linda's house. Mr. Alvarez, bagging leaves near the curb, saw a tow truck idle in front of Daniel's car one morning. Driver waiting while Linda spoke to him with folded arms. Daniel tried online ventures, sports betting, a crypto platform marketed aggressively on streaming services. The attempts sparked briefly, then left ash. He began to frequent a low-rent gym, the kind with flickering fluorescent tubes. Even from the sidewalk, you could see him pushing weight too fast and watching his reflection as if the mirror might applaud. Emily didn't posture, she built. The boutique's online store launched with clean photography and clear return policies. She hired 2 part-time staffers and trained them with patient demonstrations: how to fold, how to greet, how to maintain eye contact for exactly the right number of beats. The local paper ran a small feature on her expansion. Photos showed Emily at a work table, sleeves rolled, measuring tape around her neck, smiling just enough to crease one cheek. She spoke at a young entrepreneur's breakfast, offered a 5-minute checklist for keeping books neat, and stepped back from the microphone as the room took notes. She upgraded the boutique's lighting, swapped amber bulbs for daylight LEDs, and repainted the back wall a soft pewter. A new scent diffuser released notes of vetiver and fig. Customers lingered. Sales increased. When a national magazine emailed to request an interview about women who protect their businesses, Emily scheduled a slot for early morning and kept her responses direct. She declined to say Daniel's name on record. The article highlighted best practices. A sidebar quoted her on the value of clean documentation, credited simply as Emily, boutique owner. At home, she replaced the old mailbox with one that didn't squeak and had her initials embossed on the lid. She hosted a small dinner for staff after hours at the shop, pushing racks aside to set a long table with plain white dishes and a row of eucalyptus branches down the center. Laughter rose and fell. Someone turned on music. Nora toasted to Grace Under Fire, raising a glass with a steady hand. Emily lifted hers in return. The moment ended with a quiet clink. Sophia drifted back into the boutique one afternoon after the article ran. She stood by the sunglasses and pretended to try on frames. Emily looked up from the counter. Sophia's hands fidgeted with the case. Her mouth opened and closed. "I was wrong," she said finally, volume low. Emily listened without changing stance. "I thought he was exciting," Sophia continued. "But he wanted everything to be about him. Even my rent." Emily tilted her head a fraction. "Hope you're well," she said, voice polite. Sophia nodded and left with a small, relieved breath. Months folded into a year. The boutique added a second location on the other side of town. A bright corner space with big windows and clean lines, ribbon cut, camera flash, applause. The gestures of growth were public and easy. Emily's movements matched the tempo: site visits, design meetings, vendor calls, delivery checks. The framed screenshot of Daniel's initial text hung in her office. Not gloating, just square under the track light like a museum label for a turning point. Daniel moved into a room above a detached garage owned by a friend of a friend. He carried his belongings in plastic bins, head down, baseball cap low. Linda still brought him casserole every other Sunday, but she had stopped making excuses when neighbors asked where he was working. "Trying to find his feet," she'd say, hands smoothing invisible wrinkles on her slacks. Jenna started bringing her kids to Emily's store for school concert clothes. The children took the little candies at the checkout and smiled shyly up at Emily as she bagged their shirts. Emily spoke at a regional conference about resilience in small business, her slides clean, her bullet points sparse. During QA, a young owner asked whether keeping assets separate signaled distrust. Emily stood with one hand lightly resting on the lectern. "It signals stewardship," she said. "Documentation is not drama." Pens scratched across notepads. Heads nodded. The session ended with brief handshakes and a stack of business cards tucked into a thin case. Sophia reappeared in town with a job at a marketing agency and, later, a quiet boyfriend her own age. And she sometimes chose gifts at Emily's boutique, paying with a card and a small smile. The town's chatter faded into a calmer register. The storm had moved through. What remained was the architecture Emily had reinforced while it raged. As for Daniel, time made its adjustments plain. At the gym, he now wore an old college t-shirt instead of the flashy brand that had once hugged his torso. He spotted a younger man on the bench press and waited for a nod that didn't come. On his way out, he held the door for a woman who thanked him without recognition. Outside, he lit a cigarette with a cupped hand in the wind, exhaled, and watched the trail disappear before it cleared the lot. On the 5th anniversary of the boutique's founding, Emily hosted a small celebration at the flagship store. The lights glowed, the glass gleamed. Guests leaned against the display tables and talked in an easy volume. Linda arrived early, bought a scarf, and held it to her throat in the mirror, eyelids shining. "You've built something solid," she said, voice soft but clear. Emily thanked her and wrapped the scarf as she would for any customer, tissue folded, ribbon cut at a clean angle, sticker aligned. Nora gathered empty glasses and stacked them in a crate. Call bells on the door gave 2 gentle chimes as late well-wishers slipped in, signed the guest book, and left with tidy packages. Emily moved from group to group, not floating, just present, adjusting a hem on a mannequin, straightening a frame, refilling a dish of peppermints. A photographer asked her to stand by the window. She did, angled slightly, shoulders even. The photo would later show a woman at ease in a place arranged by her hands. Later that night, after the glasses had been washed and set to dry on a towel, Emily unlocked the office and stood for a moment looking at the framed screenshot above the awards. The words were still ridiculous in their bravado, still awful in their timing, but the frame's edges shone under the track light. She turned off the lamp, locked the door, and stepped into the hallway. Her footsteps sounded steady on the floorboards. Daniel had imagined a different scene for her. Begging. Collapse. A wilted woman clutching the edges of a life he believed he owned. He had written himself the hero of his page and tacked her to the margin. The town had turned the page. Emily had too. She did it the same way she wrapped a gift, with measured hands, straight lines, and a ribbon tied once, then twice, into a secure bow. Daniel thought he had written the last line of Emily's life. In truth, he only opened the page to her beginning.